afternoon, and welcome to this substitute Wednesday work session, March 6th. Thank you all for your flexibility and shifting from last week to this week, and it enables us to have a full council for this conversation. So our first order of business is to discuss House Bill 2001. I'm going to turn it over to staff.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Alyssa Hanson with the Planning Division, and I also have Lauren Summers with the City Attorney's Office here with me. Normally, Ethan Nelson would be presenting this, but we're filling in for him in his absence. And again, the topic is House Bill 2001, which was introduced during this the current legislative session by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tina Kotek. And the identified goal for this bill is to increase housing choice for households of different ages, sizes, and incomes in single-family neighborhoods. And really, I mean, it's in recognition of the housing availability and affordability is really an issue statewide. Obviously, we're struggling with it, but we're not the only ones in the state. This bill is being called the Missing Middle Housing Bill or the Middle Housing Bill. And just some background, there was a public hearing before the House Committee of Human Services about a month ago, and that it received a lot of attention. It kind of reminded me maybe of an ADU hearing in Eugene. There was a lot of people on either side there. I think at a high level, a lot of folks support the idea of increasing housing availability and affordability. I think there's a lot of questions about the methods being proposed in this tool. Your agenda item summary outlines some of the relevant meetings and happenings with this bill. There aren't any current meetings scheduled at the state related to this bill, but sometimes those can happen quickly, so keep you in the loop. Probably the most important thing that happened recently, however, was that the IGR met earlier in February and voted unanimously to oppose unless amended for this particular bill and agreed that the City Council work session should be scheduled. So here we are. And here's what I am intending to cover today. So first, I just want to cover what House Bill 2001 would do if it was passed in its current form. I want to talk a little bit about what is allowed in Eugene's R1 low-density residential zone, what types of housing are already allowed and how. I want to talk about some of the current projects that planning is working on that are related to housing and implementation of Envision Eugene. And finally, touch briefly on the city's legislative priorities that are related to this bill as well. All right, so starting with what would this bill do? I know you all have a copy of the bill, but sometimes looking at those makes your skin crawl a little bit. But first, it would define middle housing as duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and cottage clusters. So that's the first thing, pretty simplest thing it does. Next, it would require cities that are over 10,000 in size and counties over 15,000 in size to allow for the development of at least one of those four housing types on each lot in areas within urban growth boundaries that are zoned for detached single-family dwellings, subject to reasonable local regulations related to siting and design. And there's a reason that sounds familiar, because that's the exact language from Senate Bill 1051 that, well, I think a lot of us find maybe a little too vague. And so this particular section of the bill has a lot of areas where we could use some clarification around. It's I think that they're intended to be permitted outright, like by right, so that you would go straight to building permit. But there's a lot of uncertainty around, would our density standards still apply, and what are local reasonable regulations related to siting and design when it comes to these housing types. And then it would also require that we adopt these regulations no later than January 1st of 2021, so which honestly is right around the corner. And if we didn't, or another city weren't able to adopt those by that time frame, we would have to apply a model code that was adopted by the state. So if for cities that don't change their codes in time, the state will have one ready for you, and the cities would have to implement that code instead, or until they get their own. There's a few other things that it does. It would direct the Department of Consumer and Business Services to make some changes to building codes related to these housing types, and that addresses both kind of removing some perceived barriers, but also ensuring that their safety is still addressed. It would make sure that system development charges could be deferred until certificate of occupancy. Currently, they're usually collected when the building permit is issued. This would give some relief to builders that they wouldn't have to pay that until the building itself was ready to be occupied. This is actually consistent with one of the recommendations from Housing Tools and Strategies. The next one is related to appeal fees, and what it says is that if an applicant applies for missing middle housing, the city denies that application, and then they appeal it to the Land Use Board of Appeals, and they prevail, that we, the city, get to pay their attorney fees. And that even means if it's remanded back to so if we deny it, and it gets sent back to us by the Land Use Board of Appeals to fix some findings, we would still be required to pay their attorney's fees. So this is another section of it that we find somewhat problematic. And then finally, this one is actually relates to Senate Bill 1051 and accessory dwellings, and it would clarify that owner occupancy and off-street parking requirements are not reasonable regulations relating to siting and design, and that would be just for accessory dwellings. So that's not entirely consistent with the direction that you gave a couple weeks ago, but it would provide clarity from the state level. Next, I want to turn to the R1 zone in general. I kind of want to just give a little bit of primer on our R1 zone, because the bill does say, in areas zoned for detached single-family dwellings. Again, we're not entirely sure what that means. I think it clearly means our R1 low-density residential zone. It may mean the other zones as well, probably means some special area zones, but for the purpose of today, I am only going to focus on R1. And as you can see from our zoning map, that's about, it's over half of our zoning within the urban growth boundary is low-density residential. It's that cream color, the lightest yellow. So what types of housing are already allowed in our R1 zone? So R1, it does allow actually a range of housing types. Some of them are allowed outright. Others can only be, in certain circumstances, and others are required to go through a land use application process. The R1 zone, so low density residential, what the land use code says that it's designed for one family dwellings with some allowance for other types of dwellings, and is also intended to provide a range of non-residential uses that would enhance the quality of low density residential areas. So if you think about churches, schools, and parks, those are some of the other uses that you often see in R1. But in terms of housing, that is where you probably predominantly see the most of our single family or one family dwellings, one per lot. We also see secondary or accessory dwellings. Those are also permitted outright. Row houses are allowed, and those are small houses, small lots, they're attached. The R1 zone, you are allowed to do duplexes, triplexes, and four-plexes under certain circumstances, and I'll get to that in a minute. Multifamily, which is 3 or more units, is also allowed subject to a planned unit development, which is a fairly rigorous process. Manufactured home parks are allowed, and then so is controlled income and rent housing, which is housing that's affordable to certain income levels, and it is eligible for a slight density bonus. Let's see. And these are the four housing types that are generally called out in the bill. So duplexes, triplexes, the bill calls them quadplexes, but our code calls them fourplexes. I think it's easier to say anyway. And then we don't have a specific thing called cottage cluster, but it would probably fall under multifamily or under regular single family. So I'm going to cover these a little bit and just talk about how there are, where and how we allow them in Eugene in R1. These, what the state is calling middle housing types. So duplexes. Duplexes are, would be two attached dwellings on one lot. And there are two ways you could have a duplex in the R1 zone. The first was if you have a corner lot that's at least 8,000 square feet, then you are able to build a duplex on that lot. You can build it on a vacant lot. You could convert your existing house to a duplex. If you're going through a subdivision process, which means you're creating 4 or more new lots, you can also identify a lot there as a duplex, and it doesn't have to be on the corner, but it does need to be at least 8,000 square feet. There are some exceptions that were adopted in 2014 that new duplexes are prohibited within the boundaries of the 3 university area neighborhoods. So for duplexes, the same standards that apply to a regular single-family home in terms of setback, height, lot coverage, parking, those apply the same to duplexes. So they have the same exact standards as a single-family home. And just in terms of, I know it's hard to visualize density, and I have a piece on that in a minute, but so 2 units on 8,000 square feet is about 10.9 units per acre. So just keep that in mind, because so R1 allows up to 14 units per acre. But for duplexes, we can up the lot size a little bit so that you actually end up with a lower density. So for triplexes, again, this is 3 units on 3 attached units on one lot. They're not particularly common in R1, at least in Eugene. And there are, again, 2 different ways that you could accomplish getting a triplex in R1. The first would be if you're creating a subdivision, you could have a lot that's at least 10,000 or 12,000 square feet, and you would need to identify that specifically that you're going to build a triplex on it. Or you can go through a planned unit development process. And again, that's probably one of our most rigorous land use processes. The city fees themselves are over $21,000, and that doesn't include any design fees for the design professionals. It probably takes about a year to go through both the tentative and final PUD process. And I will say, in my time at the city, I have not seen anybody go through a PUD for a triplex. It's probably doesn't really pencil out. That's usually bigger projects than something like a triplex. So again, the general R1 standards apply, so height, setbacks, lot coverage apply. But because this is 3 or more units on one lot, then the multifamily development standards also kick in, which would be, these are the same standards that would apply basically to any kind of apartment that gets built. Any 3 or more units on one lot is when the multifamily standards kick in. So this, the hub, just think of any multifamily development that you've seen built recently, and a triplex would be subject to the same standards. And those include building orientation and entrance locations, building mass and facade and articulation, landscaping and open space, there's driveway, parking area, and pedestrian circulation requirements. And then if you are creating one through a subdivision, I wanted to point out that there's also a limitation on how many of each of these types you could have. I won't get into the specifics, but you couldn't create a subdivision of all triplexes or all duplexes or all fourplexes. There are limitations on that. And then, so moving on to fourplexes, very similar to a threeplex, but so again, it's 4 units, attached units on one lot. And there are 2 ways to accomplish getting a fourplex. One would be through the subdivision process, and you would need to create a lot that's at least 16,000 square feet and identified as a subdivision on the subdivision, or you could go through the planned unit development process. And again, the same standards that apply to triplexes apply to fourplexes. And that would be the regular R1 standards plus the multifamily standards. In fact, I was not able to find any examples of any individual fourplexes being built on a single lot in R1. We've had some triplexes built, but I was unable to find an example. It doesn't mean there isn't one, but there isn't one that anybody can think of in any recent history. So it's not something that we tend to see in R1. And then finally, cottage clusters was the fourth housing type that's mentioned in the bill. This is not a specific housing type that's called out in our code. And the House bill defines it, you need at least 4 detached housing units per acre. They're limited to a 900 square foot footprint. The homes are, as I read it, and that there must be a common courtyard. It's unclear if the legislation means that you're gonna have one lot with multiple houses, or if you're gonna have small individual lots that are clustered. But in either case, those are currently both allowed in our R1 zone, going through a process. You can go through the planned unit development if you're wanting to create multiple units on one lot. We have had some of the affordable housing providers do something similar through the controlled income and rent housing provisions. And then you can also go through a cluster subdivision if you want to create smaller lots along with some open space. And again, these are subject to the regular R1 standards for setbacks and heights. If you're doing multiple units on the one lot, again, they would be subject to the multifamily standards. So just really quickly, in talking with a couple of you, it sounded like just being able to maybe visualize better what density might look like, or what densities of certain ranges look like. I have just a couple examples. Again, in R1, the maximum density is 14 units per acre. This is a project that maxed that out. It's located at the corner of Cal Young and North Kenzie. It is zoned R1. It's approximately 14 units per acre, and it's 30 units on just over 2 acres. I will say it was approved through a planned unit development, and it doesn't meet the House bill definition for a cottage cluster. I'm just showing it just for the purposes of this is what 14 units per acre looks like. And this is a density that's about 3.6 units per acre. This is, these are 9 units. So this is south of Willakinsey Road off Bogart. And it's actually a cluster subdivision. There are 9 individual lots showing here. The house on the bottom is actually the house that's kind of on the corner lot, the one that faces the street. And then this is a duplex, and it's at 8 units per acre. This is in the friendly neighborhood. The lot itself is about 10,700 square feet. And so with 2 units on that, that gets you to 8 units per acre. And then finally, this is an older duplex also in Friendly. It's built in the 60s when our duplex standards were much different. The lot is actually just above 6,000 square feet, so it exceeds 14 units per acre, but at that time, that was allowed. It's actually a 2-story duplex. The picture on the right shows the entrance to the upper story, and then the other street side has the entrance to the lower story unit. And then I just want to now jump ahead to just talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing in the planning division and beyond that's related to housing. I don't expect you to read this, and I know that makes people cringe when I put up something and you can't read it, but I know you've all seen this, and that's why I'm providing it today. I know we've given it to you at other presentations just about all of the work that we are doing to implement Envision Eugene. And a number of this is related to housing, which I'm going to get to in just a second. But the work that we are doing related to housing is guided by Envision Eugene, and predominantly the pillar about providing housing that's affordable to all. So I'm really showing this for 2 reasons. One, to let you know what we're working on, or remind you what we're working on related to housing, but also if we have to turn and implement new regulations by January 1st of 2021, we won't be able to accomplish all of this work within the timeframes we're hoping. So now you can read the pieces. These are the pieces from that previous slide that are related to our housing project. So next week you'll be talking again about housing tools and strategies, which is really about, talking about availability, diversity, and type. Also, there's a housing code audit underway that's related to the housing tools and strategies, and it is looking at barriers to missing middle housing as part of our code. The clear and objective update, which you've recently had updates on yourself about our land use approval criteria. River Road, Santa Clara, very much related to housing. The River Road Corridor Study, talking about densifying along the corridor of River Road. Comprehensive Plan Phase 2 will include policies that address housing, also have the parcel-specific diagram. Urban reserves planning will be about where our future houses are going to go. Growth monitoring is tracking it all, and then I had to throw up accessory dwelling remand because that is housing, and you are working on it, and so am I. So. Moving on, and then moving to I want to kind of finish with the legislative priorities. These are in your packet, but I just want to cover them real quick. So one of the major concerns of both the IGR and staff that, as written, House Bill 2001 would preempt local authority around land use regulations related to middle housing types. And so one of our legislative priorities for this year, as you can see, would be opposing such legislation. On the other hand, there are some priorities that really do align with the proposed legislation about preserving and expanding programs and tools that help us get more affordable housing. Now, I know the bill doesn't necessarily say this is for affordable housing. We can't guarantee that middle housing types are affordable or not, but it definitely would increase housing supply if we were to get those types. And then finally, this last bullet, we actually added this one this year, and I think good timing, because what it says, well, if to the extent that we're mandated to do something, we want to make sure that it's clear. So unlike 1051, we want to make sure that the language is clear and we understand what we're supposed to do, and that there's flexibility so that we still can maintain local control. So those were the four legislative priorities that went into the recommendation of the IGR. And that's what you're being asked to consider today. And really, this recommendation, it allows the city to continue to be part of the conversation. So rather than a flat-out oppose, the oppose unless amended allows us to continue to request clarifications, to work with the League of Oregon Cities staff on potential amendments, and work with the legislators and try to get more clarity, get changes. We also know that this one, although there aren't any meetings scheduled, it seems to be moving pretty quickly. It will probably change and morph as it goes, and so we kind of need some flexibility to be able to work with that as it goes through the process. I don't have any specific amendments, and the IGR did not talk about any specific amendments. I want to bring up one today that, in channeling Lauren, she would like me to bring up, is that particularly the one about the appeal fee, the one that would make us have to pay appeal fees. I think we would definitely support the elimination of that particular provision. There are some others that I think that we had talked about either at IGR or with others, and could there be exemption? I'm just going to use these to seed your conversation, and I'll turn it back to the mayor after that, after I go through these. But could there be exemptions based on the current work? The city is doing a lot of work related to housing, including work related to these housing types. Could there be a longer time frame for compliance? January 1st of 2021, it means that we're going to have to reprioritize our work program, and some of the things that we're working on right now that would achieve some of these same things couldn't happen. clarification is definitely something this bill needs more of. I mean, there's a lot of terms in there. I think I see lots of head nods. There's a lot of terms in there that just we need more clarity around if they're going to stay. Another thing that was brought up, I think, at the hearing by some other cities is, what about the location of those housing? You know, we're trying to densify more along corridors as opposed to in our neighborhoods. Could that be wrapped into this? And then one of the things the bill is lacking is any support for cities in terms of financial or otherwise resources from the state. There's money for the state in here to enforce us not doing it, but there's not money coming to any of the jurisdictions to help us do this work. So I'm just kind of throwing those out there. I mean, it may be possible at the end of the day that there's not even an amendment that anybody would be satisfied with. But I think at this point, this particular stance allows us to continue to have that seat at the table. And I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you so much. I already have Betty in the queue, but before I turn to council, I'll just reiterate a couple of things. That first of all, you know, IGR discussed this at length and felt that there was such discomfort around this that the council should have an opportunity to really get some clarification, understand what it says, and I think, thank you, I think you've done a great job of sort of explaining it and putting it in context for us. And then the second thing is a sense of urgency that the City of Eugene should be at the table, and we want to make sure that as these negotiations go on, we're not stuck out in the hallway while decisions are being made in a room. And a concern that this is likely to pass in some form, and we want to make sure that we can make it as close to something we feel we can work with as possible. So that was the foundation for the IGR's recommendation, but we want to give you all a chance to understand more and have a full conversation about it. So with that, I have Betty. Anybody else ready to be in the queue? Greg. Okay, take it away, Betty.
Oh, Mike. Okay, and starting with clarification, I was at the IGR committee meeting. There were two people there who were on the committee. Greg was absent. I think he had a reason, but he wasn't there. So there were two of us. And to say it was unanimous is rather unclear, deceptive. I was totally opposed. I'm opposed to the bill, but I was opposed to saying with amendments, without amendments. We should just say we're opposed to it, absolutely. And the meeting lasted a long time because I was holding out for that position. And the mayor said, as she has said now, that we wouldn't be able to say anything if we did that. Our rules are usually, if the IGR committee doesn't agree, it goes to the full council. And I was told at that time that there was no opportunity for that. I'm glad we have an opportunity now for the full council to bring it up. But my position is still we should just oppose the bill. It's a bad bill. It's, if nothing else, if it was only that it's preempting local authority, that's enough to oppose it. That in itself. But the saying that it would make housing more affordable, actually, it's probably just the opposite. If people could buy up medium-priced houses and put triplexes on them, they wouldn't be renting them for a low amount of money or selling them for a small amount of money. The bill includes many things that are wrong, but I think home rule alone is enough. I think it also requires that you get rid of the residency requirement, but we should decide those things. One person said, the goal one public information. One constituent did find out about it and took some comfort from the fact that she is in a place where there are CC&Rs, which makes it inequitable. People who live in those areas wouldn't have to worry about their neighborhood being invaded by triplexes and fourplexes. And the people who, I think Greg will be able to tell us about more about what's happened in Portland with people buying up moderate price housing and chasing out the people who of low income who live there. But I strongly think we should just oppose it. not say anything about amendments. I can't think of any amendments that would make it better. And even if they would, we could do that locally. If there's some action we think should happen, we could do it locally instead of having the state tell us what to do. Thank you.
Okay, Greg.
Thanks, Mayor. And I'll echo Betty's sentiments to a point. You know, I am dead set against this thing. I'm really opposed to it in its current form. I don't think it does any of us any good. It's a Portland solution that is looking to be, you know, implemented across the state, which is not, you know, basically we're not Portland. And what they have done in Portland in planning in terms of this is a way for them to, they think there's a way for them to be able to solve the problems of gentrification that have happened in Northeast Portland over the last 15 to 20 years. And this is not a solution. There are clear examples all up and down the line in Portland area where they have tried to do this, and what has happened is they haven't put in workforce housing. They have not put in affordable housing. It's been everything that they put in terms of duplexes, triplexes, et cetera, have gone to market rate. That's likely what will happen here if this piece of legislation passes, if this bill passes. So, you know, and I don't want to speak for the mayor or anybody else here, but, you know, I had to think about this for a long time in terms of the position of the city of Eugene with relation to, you know, HB 2001, as well as, well, hopefully we'll get into some conversation about Senate Bill 10, which is also another horrendous piece of legislation, that if we're not in the room and we're not able to have these conversations and discussions with the legislative team that is pushing this bill down, we won't be able to have a way to amend it. We all know there's a supermajority in the legislature, and they don't necessarily have to listen to us. But this is not a fully thought out proposal. It would cause us, it would basically flip all of our planning that we have done over the last 15 to 20 years, including Envision Eugene, upside down. And so, yeah, I would like to say flat no, 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 and no, but I realize the political reality is that we have to have a position where we can negotiate. I'll take a second round, Mayor.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. If I recall, I think actually Greg was there when we had this conversation, so it was all three members.
We had that vote before. I missed the last meeting.
Yeah, but the one where we had the vote, you were there.
Yeah.
Be that as it may, I think we need to be really clear. This is not at all in any way, shape, a conversation about whether or not to support or oppose 2001. This is a conversation about what kind of oppose we want to do. We want to oppose it because it is not at all acceptable in its current form. So the question is, do we oppose it in such a way that we get up, walk away from the table, and have no involvement in what is eventually done to us? Or do we say we oppose it unless you can make some sort of acceptable amendments, which I don't know what those might be. They would need to be pretty extensive, but at least it keeps us at the table talking about it. So it's not done to us, it's at least done with us to some degree. I actually had a chance to sit down in a meeting with the League of Oregon Cities. It had a lot of Alyssa clones there from other cities who were talking about their concerns. There is concern all over the state about what impacts this would have on local jurisdictions and their planning. And then after that, we all trundled over and talked to the speaker. The speaker has a lot of energy behind this bill. I think there's a really good chance something will pass. And with that in mind, if we are not at the table, we have no influence at all in terms of what gets passed. And then we just have to live with it. And even League of Oregon Cities recognizes that it would be better to be involved in what gets passed rather than just say, you know what, I don't like it, I'm leaving the table, I'm walking away. That doesn't help us at all. So we can oppose it and just walk away, or we can oppose it and try to be involved in influencing what may ultimately get passed. That, to me, is the position that I think we should take, the one that's up there on the board. It does not imply in any way that we are supportive of this bill. It just says we oppose it, but we want to be at the table to at least continue to talk to you about it, so when something does get passed, we at least have had some influence on it. I told the Speaker of the House, just on local control alone, I'm obligated to oppose the bill, and she certainly understood that. But I said, if you want to be able to do something like this to us, you have to do it in a way that we can live with and that at least acknowledges and accommodates and recognizes the incredible amount of work we're going to at the local level. Because if this passes, it has elements in it that will not in any way accommodate the tremendous amount of work we've done here. That would be right off the top an amendment that would have to be made before it would even start to smell like it was appropriate. But I want to be at the table to at least have that conversation. And if we just oppose it flat out, we won't. So to me, that's the simple choice. Not whether or not to oppose it, it's what kind of oppose. And I think this position at least allows us to continue the conversation.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have to say that this is a bill about what municipalities will do. And if we live in the kind of a state where the Speaker of the House and the legislature doesn't care what the second largest city in the state thinks and is willing to do it anyway, that's a pretty sad commentary on our legislative leadership, especially in the event that there are most of the leaders of both of these entities are of the same party. It's a really kind of sad statement, I think. I want to, and I don't know that I agree that there's some magic table that everyone will be sitting around to discuss this. We still have opportunities to interact with our legislators and to interact with those who are in the process of working on this bill in Salem. I tend to agree with Betty. I think it ought to be opposed outright. It's really interesting, too, because I think I'm like maybe the only guy at the table who actually lives in middle housing as defined here. And it's fine. It's awesome. And as someone in my profession, if this passes, I'll make oodles of money from lending people money to tear down older homes and build four-plexes. And if you think it's a good idea, then drive around the university and see what happened there when affordable single homes were taken down to put up four-plexes. That's what it'll look like in everybody's neighborhood. It's a horrible idea. And frankly, for me, the most concerning part is if the Speaker doesn't care what the second largest city in the state feels about this, if we were to oppose it outright, then that's a really, really sad commentary on our ability to be influential at the Capitol, too, I think. Thank you.
Claire.
Thank you. Thanks for walking us through that. I did have just one question before I spoke to the merits of a possible position. You mentioned that there are limitations of building certain types of multifamily housing within a subdivision, like you can't have all duplexes.
Right.
Do you know the rationale for that?
I don't know. I know that was part of the 2001 code update, but I don't actually know the exact rationale, and I haven't looked into it.
So it would have to be a mix of, duplexes and standalone.
Right. It's you're limited to a maximum of 25% duplex lots, 15% triplex, 10% fourplex, and at least 50% have to be single-family detached.
Okay, thanks. That's very interesting.
In R1.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's so
it's not the fact that it's a subdivision, it's a subdivision in R1.
Subdivision in R1.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. At this point, and I'll continue to listen to the conversation, but I would be inclined to oppose simply on the grounds of not wanting to support such a major preemption of our ability to make these important decisions on behalf of our community. I tend towards pragmatism in my work on council, so I appreciate the suggestion of finding a way to keep us in the conversation by not taking that kind of approach. And I might even support some of the goals of this bill that the state legislature is considering. But the preemption, in my mind, is so dramatic that taking a position that it would be okay if they just gave us some more time and let us grandfather in things and maybe give us some resources, it doesn't take away that onerous application of authority over us that I have a really hard time with. I also recognize that, the passage of this bill would make it politically a lot easier for us to do some of the work that I have criticized us for dragging our feet on. But that doesn't make it okay in my mind. So right now, I'm inclined to agree with Councilors Clark, Taylor, and Evans, or maybe Councilors Clark and Taylor. I'm really inclined just to say this bill doesn't work for cities, and it's not okay for the state legislature to decide such a dramatic imposition of will on home rule jurisdictions. So I'll continue to listen to my colleagues around the table, and I might shift my view on that, but that's where I'm sitting right now.
Okay. Emily?
Thank you very much. I agree. The preemption of local land laws is unacceptable. And then there's, of course, supporting things. It has no citizen involvement here, and we keep saying we're all about outreach, and this wouldn't let us do it. My biggest question is, what influence do we have if we say we want amendments, and what does directly opposing it actually prevent us from doing?
This is when I wish Ethan was here. So here, it's based on my understanding, because Ethan's the one that obviously does most of the work between here in the state. But with the unless amended, it kind of keeps us at the table. So we're not a flat no. Which table is that? Your question?
What's the table?
Well, it's a theoretical table.
Well, there is a table.
There is a table, but often
There's a working group right now that the legislature has on this bill, and I know that League of Oregon Cities is in the room in that particular context.
Okay, I hadn't heard that there is a working group.
There is a working group.
There is a working group, and so we typically funnel through the League of Oregon Cities. At times, we do ask for a seat at the actual table. Maybe because Ethan's out of town, we were a little behind on this one. So we'll find out more about that. But it does allow us to work through the League of Oregon Cities. It also gives us a kind of a stronger position with some of the legislators, local folks, because I think there is, and I think Councilor Pryor mentioned this, I mean, there's a good chance that something will pass. And so if we just stand back and say no, I think folks will go around us rather than us talking about, I mean, it may be that it's this bill and Senate Bill 10 merge and become something completely different, but that, there is a lot of momentum around housing and different types of housing at the state level, and I think we really want to be able to participate in those. And and maybe it's more of a perception, but if we say, absolutely not, a lot of people are going to just continue working with the folks who say, well, is there something else we can try? Can we roll up our sleeves and try?
So if we oppose it directly, we basically can't, we can still talk to our representatives. That doesn't prevent us from having any input, even as a council later on.
We can still participate in any hearings, absolutely.
And who gets invited to the table? Is it any city that opposes with amendments, or is there some structure for choosing?
I don't know on this particular.
I think
So it's already decided who's at the table?
No, well, I know that there is a working group. So there is a table there. There's a working group. So
And the working group's closed?
LOC is one of the groups that's there.
But not anybody at this table right now, right?
Well, technically I would be, but, staff is handling that.
So if we oppose it with amendments, you're kicked off the table?
Yeah, that's the question.
Lauren,
So-
did you want to speak to this?
If I may, and again, I too wish Ethan was here who could really speak to these questions, but doing my best to channel him and what I think I've heard him say in the past is if the direction from this body is a straight up oppose, then he feels like what he is limited to do on the bill in Salem is to straight up oppose it. He doesn't have the direction from the council to try to work to make the bill better. The only thing he can do is try to kill it, basically. If you have a direction of oppose unless amended, that gives him more flexibility, not only to perhaps be invited to the table, but also to feel like he has the direction from this body to continue to work with legislators and have conversations with legislators about potential changes to the bill and not just an attempt to kill it. And it, it may be that at the end of the day, the council decides to oppose the bill, that there are no amendments that make it palatable for the city. But if the council decided to go with the recommended direction, it would give Ethan that flexibility to continue to try to make the bill better for us as it moves through the legislature.
My biggest concern with this is how density is affected, and I think there's no clear anything about it. How are the plexes counted? If there's a duplex, does it count as 2? Does it count as 1? We're going to be adding, which is part of the idea, a lot more units to the area. But is the state going to be able to decide now what our density is, or is that still under our control?
Those are really good questions. I mean, that's one of the areas where I think clarification would be huge. It's not clear that we'd still be able to apply density or that we have to raise densities, or none of that is called out in the bill, and so that part's
so
unclear.
We get to decide and then get remanded for it. The parking spaces, I don't understand why that's such a concern. Is it a part of how much the lot is covered? What's the difference between having it included and not included?
Are you talking about for accessory dwellings or for?
Yeah, I guess so, because, do these plexes need parking too?
Yeah, parking, they are required to have 1 parking space per dwelling unit. So yes, plexes will be required to have parking. The exemption I was mentioning relates to accessory dwellings.
Right.
And so it would modify what 1051 says and give a little bit of clarity around what reasonable regulations related to siting and design are. And it says that owner occupancy and on-site parking are not reasonable regulations related to siting and design. So that's what the bill says right now.
Well, I think whether or not you have a parking space is part of the design. And I think that's pretty critical in light of our CRO work. I think a lot of the things in here are not good for our climate, such as taking down houses that have already been built and pouring new concrete and new materials to make more expensive houses, therefore sending everybody to the outskirts where they're going to drive their beat-up emission-producing cars because they're poor and cannot afford to stay in the city or move to a place with a CCR where they won't be affected by this at all. There's nothing in this bill that I can approve of. And the fact that it goes against home rule, I don't really care what it says after that. That's essential to me, and that's where I'm voting.
Jennifer.
Yeah, well, thank you, Emily, for asking my questions. I was feeling like a rookie to have to ask them, so I'm glad someone else did. I don't like this bill either. I think that seems to be the general consensus in the room, and I would love to just oppose it and say how much I hate it, but I'm sending Ethan to go do a job for me, and I want him to be able to do the best job he can, and it sounds like you feel like having the with amendment part on there is very essential. Did you say that is accurate?
Trying to channel Ethan, I would say yes.
Okay. All right. Well, then I think that I want the staff to be able to be in the best position they can be in to get a better outcome. And if that means if those couple words get us at a table, this mysterious table that I don't know where it is or who's going to be there, then I want to support that. So So thank you for your presentation. It was excellent, and I really appreciated the pictures telling me what, so many acres, but having them right there, that's great. Thank you.
Alan.
Yeah, first I just wanted a general comment about the IGR process. I still have a big problem with the way that we do this. I feel completely disconnected from what's going on in the legislature as a counselor, and I thought we were going to work on a happy medium between what we used to do and what we do now, which is nothing, or if it's some gigantic issue, we bring it to the council. Otherwise, we don't hear anything about it. So maybe after the session, we can work on that process and get to some place where counselors feel like we're more involved. I'm totally in support of more affordable housing, more missing middle housing, my work session that we're working on. So I'm completely there on all of that. I don't like this bill at all. It has many problems. Usurping our local control and using land for land use and zoning. That's a cookie cutter Portland solution to a statewide opposed on the state. Probably won't result in more affordable housing. And like Greg said, more dense market rate housing. Paying the appeal fees is, I think, misplaced. I don't at all like the ADU requirements that owner occupied and no parking. And that's only for the ADUs. It doesn't apply to any of this other part. So that was just an add-on. The time frame's too fast. And then, just basically this protection of neighborhoods. I think it'd have the most impact in my part of the city, my ward. I can just see around the university area, people buying older single-family houses, putting in a four-plex with 12 students in it, and right next door, and you can't say a thing. And that will have a gigantic impact on the livability of neighborhoods in my part of the town. And I think that's true for all parts of the town, but more in particular mine, I think, because that's where the pressures are for that kind of housing. Missing middle housing is allowed in our current zones, in R1 under certain circumstances, and they really relate to lot size. This legislation would eliminate those lot size requirements, or is that at all clear?
That's not entirely clear. It does say you would have to allow one on each lot, and it's just subject to reasonable standards related to siting and design. So it's questionable again, our density and lot size, are those reasonable standards related to siting and design? So I'd say it's unclear.
Speaking of unclear, line 15, it says that the development of at least one middle housing type on each lot. So does that mean that we could just say, okay, you can just do single family or duplexes, done?
I think the intent is, that's an interesting question. So this is why.
Because that's poorly written.
It is. No, it is. There's a lot about the bill that's poorly written, and I think that it's very problematic, and if it passed in its current form, it would be incredibly problematic to figure out how to write it, let alone the impacts of it.
My first motion would be, okay, we'll just allow duplexes, that's it. Then the rest of this goes away, and then have them challenge us. But
yeah, I think the intent is that you're supposed to allow any of those four per lot.
Seems like it, but it's
But you're right. Agreed.
There's at least one, so we've got one. On the position, I strongly oppose this too, and sometimes the hell no position, go away is a good place to be, but that means that you're usually out of the conversation. And that's been my experience. But in this case, this bill does have legs. It is one of the hot topics at the legislature. It's the speaker's bill, one of the most powerful people in the Capitol. And I also agree that something will pass. What does it look like? From my pragmatic position of usually working on these kind of things, if you believe that something's going to pass, you want to be there to make it so that it's more palatable. You may not like what ends up there, but you can make it at least a little bit more palatable if you think things going to pass. I think that maybe there's a compromise position that instead of just saying oppose HB 21 unless amended, we say maybe oppose HB 21 unless substantially amended. And that means that, and then we go through and we actually list all these things, that we're very, very clear about what we think is an acceptable amendment. It's not tweaking it, it's actually changing it. Maybe you say it only applies to cities over 300,000. That'd be a great amendment. there's no preemption there. It's up to the cities to do it, would be another amendment. Maybe you get rid of the appeals fees, that could be another amendment. No ADU, owner occupied or zero parking requirement, limit it to transit corridors, allow reasonable regulations of lot sizes. These are all the type, that would, actually, if we just did that, we would be right where we are today. So I think that if we said, you know, oppose unless substantially amended, and then clearly listed some of the things that we might like to see, so it's not like, oh, Eugene's okay with some tweaks. No.
Okay. Catherine, did you want to weigh in?
So I actually was listening to the conversation around the table and was kind of starting to zero in on exactly what you said, is something in between oppose outright and oppose with amendments, to try to capture what I'm hearing around the table. So just in thinking of that, as I was listening, what I started to draft was move to oppose House Bill 2001, but authorize our legislative delegation to advocate for amendments to House Bill 2001 if opposition becomes unfeasible. So you're taking the position of oppose it, but you're giving Ethan some authority and our legislative delegation some authority to work within it. So I'm just going to throw that out there as maybe a somewhat down the middle approach, if that's.
Okay.
Well, that's the, I mean, and that's when it becomes, or if it becomes likely to pass. I mean, you could use other language like that. I mean, it's when, if you say no, 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 and and Ethan and others see that it's actually moving forward, and that we need to say, we need him to feel that he can negotiate some amendments without being contrary to the policy-making body of the city. That is the concern that he needs to carry out the will of the policy-making body. And if the will of the policy-making body is oppose, he's gonna oppose. If the will of the policy-making body is oppose, and oppose as hard as you can, right up until you can tell that your opposition, it's gonna happen, give him some authority to try to make it better. So that's what I was trying to get to.
So I have 4 counselors in the queue. We do have another item, but I just think we need to continue here, so I'm just going to carry on. And I just want to just also respond before we go back to the queue. A couple of things is just a reminder, and it could be that Greg will speak to this. We are not alone in our opposition. We had a strong statement from the League of Oregon Cities, so we have the opportunity to speak as a body and not singly as a city, and that is likely to be much stronger with the legislature in terms of influencing where this goes. So again, if we just oppose and we don't participate with the League of Oregon Cities in that, you know, that weakens Ethan's hand, basically, in Salem. The other thing is, I think, to keep in mind the broader context here, which is that that work moves forward because of relationships in the legislature, our relationships in the legislature and our legislators' relationships to one another. And so at some critical point, we have to be able to work with those relationships. And so to walk away from the table for our delegation and for other important allies to walk away from the table is a hazardous path for us to walk. So I just caution you about that, also a reason not to just outrightly oppose, but stay in that relationship, navigating, because if it's not this issue, it will be some other issue farther down the road when we really want their support, and we want to make sure that we have maintained that. So just, you know, another sort of reverberations down the road of how one decision can affect what happens later. Okay, I have Greg, Betty, Mike, and Claire. Oh, and Emily again. Okay.
And
Alan again. Got it. Okay.
You know, I think you're right on point with this in terms of the overall big picture, and that is not burning down our relationships, particularly with our local legislative body. We've got some people who are. My last conversation with a legislator about this was to tell me basically that we needed to get on board. Now, that wasn't exactly, you know, the most fruitful conversation, but and that was 2 months ago. I do think that we do need to at least keep the door cracked. Substantial changes in the bill need to happen. But we need to have a clear signal that we say no to what this is right now. This is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And neither is Senate Bill 10, which will, blow up what we're trying to do with development on transit corridors. We have got to be, I think that we have to have a strong statement, and a strong statement that we oppose this bill, but that we are willing to work with the legislature on crafting possibly a different bill, maybe even proposing a different bill that would be more in alignment with the work that we have been doing for years and years and years. Nobody can wave a wand and fix the housing problems in the state of Oregon. And I know what's behind this is the situation that has happened in Northeast Portland, where African Americans have been driven out of Northeast Portland to Troutdale, to Gresham, and the Southeast, and they have been replaced with people who have a lot of money, a lot of influence, who like to ride their bikes over the Burnside Bridge to be able to have coffee and then go to work, and then ride their bike back home. And I've seen people who have sold their homes up there for $50,000, $60,000, only to have them revamped, turned around, knocked down, and, the value of those properties have gone straight through the roof, up to 10 times as much as they were before. There's some houses up there now, Northeast, there's $750,000 that people got on the cheap. That's exactly what will happen here. It's exactly what will happen here. And we can't afford to have that happen. We're a tenth the size of Portland.
Betty.
Thank you. You said that very well, Greg. But as far as relationships are concerned, are you saying, does anyone think that the legislators won't speak to us anymore if we don't do what they want?
Well, one of them spoke to me in 2 months.
I wouldn't speak to some of you ever again if I didn't like what you've done, and that is silly to say that they would. It's in their interest to be on good terms with us, I would think, as well as the other way around. They're not our bosses. That is, and as far, Ethan's a nice person, but we don't need to do things just to make things easy for him. And when you talk about being at the table, if there's a table, we don't have to. The fact that you oppose doesn't mean you can't speak. That is ridiculous. We could still say, I think Ethan could say, or we could all say, why we dislike this bill. And above all, it's a preemption of home rule. But we could still say that. We could talk to our legislators, and we could not vote for them again, or to make them think we don't like them anymore. We won't speak to them again if they won't do what we want. But they're trying to control our land use, which is something we can discuss and argue over by ourselves without them. We can, there are a lot of controversial things. There are things that we won't agree on, but we're the ones who should be discussing them and listening to our residents while we discuss them. And but it is not if the legislature wants to give us money to help us, that's fine. But that's the only way they should be involved in our land use. And I strongly oppose this. When the reason our last meeting, the one where Greg wasn't, when I said it needs to go to council because we were not agreeing. And I was told there was no place on the agenda, no time to take it to council at that time, which is why I gave in and said, okay, well, they said we couldn't talk at all. But that is ridiculous, really. And you can't say that the IGR committee unanimously supports going, unless we want to vote again or something. But well, it won't ever be unanimous, no, because I will never support it, even with amendments. Thank you.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Everything that Betty just said, especially the first part. And any Lane County legislators that are watching this right now, you're going to have to run for election one day, and I hope you're hearing this body really oppose this. And I, for one, will be watching how our legislators vote. And I plan to make them accountable as loudly as I possibly can for their vote on this bill. So I really hope they're listening to our conversation right now. There isn't a place where you can let this pass and make it okay. Not for me. So it's not that I don't understand the value of pragmatism, for crying out loud. Of course I do. And of course, that's why I sit at this table, although I occasionally disagree with some of my colleagues. I understand the value of it. But not in this case and not on this subject. No. This is a preemption of local authority that is a bridge way too far. Not only that, in our city specifically, Alan started to touch on it really well, and so did Greg. Now, combine the two thoughts. What's the University of Oregon turning into? It's an event-oriented location. There are events all the time at the arena, at the, that's what it's becoming. And if you have any if this passes, any old single-family house within blocks, half a mile, I want to buy that right now and turn it into a four-plex and an Airbnb right now. Because there's an awful lot more money in that. And the university's helping create the events. There's all kinds of money in that. This is not. It won't just be bad for livability around those neighborhoods. It'll destroy them. This is a horrible, horrible outcome. And I'm sorry, there's no working halfway on this one that could make it acceptable to me. So I just can't. I want Ethan to pull every trick out of his hat, everything out of the book he's got, and do anything that is at all possible for him to see this killed. And that includes helping make sure that the legislators from Lane County watch this particular meeting. Thank you.
Claire.
Thank you. So I just want to point out it's gotten colder in this room since we started this meeting. So if we're wringing our hands, it's not just because of the consternation this conversation is causing. I just think this bill is not a productive approach to moving cities towards figuring out how to deal with these issues. You can hear from my colleagues' comments. I support sending a clear message that the city doesn't support having this type of regulations decided at the state level. We could direct staff to oppose the bill and lobby the legislature instead to focus on clarifying past legislation that has tied us up in knots trying to figure out how to meet it, provide cities with resources to do better on this hard work, provide more support, which would be in the form of grants or technical resources to help us build more affordable housing. There are lots of things the legislature could do to support this city in the goals that they claim this bill is meant to meet, and this bill isn't it. So I agree also with Councilor Clark that if the objections of the second largest and still growing city in the state is insufficient to give the legislature pause, that is very concerning. And at the point that it's poised to pass, I question if our advocacy to try to make modifications would really matter that much, because what political capital will we have to bring to bear at that point? In other words, why would they care if they don't care now? So, as much as it pains me to have to say that, that's the position I have right now. So, I think there is value in making a strong statement against preemption. I think we are deserving of being considered in this relationship too, with all due respect, Mayor. I appreciate you trying to find a way for us to work within this difficult scenario, but it shouldn't just be on us to capitulate towards this bill and find a way to try to make it better. So, I think we could give Ethan some, marching orders that would help him carry our message. if they were willing to throw this out and come up with something that actually supported us in doing the work that they want, rather than forcing us into something that, could have dire consequences for some of our neighborhoods. And I agree with Betty that it's our responsibility to grapple with this. It's tough work. We don't all agree. But we've made a commitment to do it and to do it together, and the legislature should let us do that.
Emily.
Thank you. In the 80s, for 3 years, I lived in a wonderful old bungalow at 15th between Mill and Ferry. The neighborhood was about half owner-occupied and about half, there was a quad, those quads, or a big apartment thing across the street. It was a very pleasant neighborhood. I really enjoyed living there. I had a little garden. And that beautiful bungalow is now a triplex with garages underneath. There's no garden at all. And the whole neighborhood's gone that way. There's very few owner-occupied. And the whole feeling of that neighborhood, the whole livability is drastically different. I don't understand why we have to get on board. Is every single person in the legislature in favor of this? I don't think so. The Speaker's bill. So what? Why is she that much more important than everybody else? Everybody can bring forth a bill that's in the legislature. Too much is unclear. What does substantially amended mean? What's different between substantially and reasonable? I don't think it works. There's nothing in this that I can support. You amend it, these things are not okay with me. Eugene is the second largest city. It's our job to make a statement and stand up to this. And if we do that, it doesn't mean we have to shut up. I oppose this. I urge you to oppose it also.
Alan.
Yeah, I don't think anybody supports this bill in the way that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about tactics. This meeting, anyway, watching it, cannot walk away from that and say, Eugene thinks the bill's okay if you tweak it a little bit. No, it's a very bad bill. It's poorly conceived, and it's a Portland fix. I can give you an amendment where I think you guys would support it if you just said this bill only applies to cities over 300,000. I don't care. I'll support that bill. Fine. Yeah. Portland wants to do that. Great. That's a substantial amendment. If we could get that to occur, which is not out of the realm of possibility. I think there are a lot of the little cities, or every other city besides Portland, probably thinks this bill's terrible. I would hope, including the league. I'll make a motion to have our position be strongly oppose HB 2001 and have staff work to kill the bill or substantially amend.
I'll second.
Okay, you second. Do you want to speak to that? Well, I don't want to jump the queue. We've got Chris in the queue and Alan's not done.
The queue's new now that he's made a motion.
So the reason I said that is because it's very clear we're opposing it. What we're trying to do is tell staff what to do. And that's what I think we need to have our direction be. It's, I think we make a very clear statement that this is a bad bill, that we all oppose it. But we need to be clear with staff about what we want them to do. If we just say, hell no, then Ethan can only say in the meetings, sorry, we oppose it. You can't say oppose it and then in the back rooms trying to fix it, unless you actually give them that kind of clear direction. So I think that's what this motion does.
Okay, Mike, you want to speak?
Yeah, I'd offer a friendly to my friend and say, I understand what you're trying to accomplish, and I'd almost be willing to, but I want to say it more strongly than that. So I'll invert it and say oppose unless. Oppose unless it applies to cities, unless only it applies to cities over 300,000 residents, in which case we could consider supporting it.
Let me think about that for a second.
Because it gives our legislators and our representatives the opportunity to participate as long as they get. It's just Portland that she's fixing this for.
By that, then what happens if that is proposed and everybody says no? Then what?
Then we oppose.
Then we don't try to amend it at all to make it?
Nope.
And it's still
Not for me.
marching away towards passage, and we're sitting on the sidelines.
I think we still have access to our legislators, and I, for one, plan to be very loud about it.
But this is about giving direction to staff about what they should say.
I think they're getting it.
I think it's pretty unclear what they're getting. But
So is that friendly not accepted?
You said you think about it.
Well, I only, unfortunately, have 2 minutes and 4 seconds. I'd like to have some more, but I don't believe I will. So unless the friendly is accepted, then I kind of want to make that as a substitute motion.
yeah, I don't accept it.
Okay, well, then I'll make that as a substitute motion.
You get a second for me.
Good. To speak to it, thank you, sir. I'm absolutely not willing to see this amended in some way and live with it. And so, in trying to be open to working pragmatism here, the only way I'd be willing is if it doesn't apply to us, but is there to fix what happens in Portland that's important to them. Fine. And our legislators should have some say in that too, so I'm all right with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm lost. I have Betty. Did you ask to be in the queue? Okay, I got Claire and then Betty. Claire and, Oh, and Chris. Okay, wait a second. But we're still on, you're speaking to Alan's motion.
This is on this amendment.
We're on, we're speaking to Mike's motion now.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a substitute.
Well,
Okay.
did he get a second?
Just want to get on the table.
I second
Okay, so I got Betty, then, did you?
And
are
Mike,
you
just
speaking-
for clarity, would you state?
Restate it?
Yeah, just state the motion so it's clear for folks watching and for everybody at the table what your substitute motion is.
Move to oppose, move to oppose unless, move to oppose only unless amended to apply to cities over 300,000 people.
In other words, if it applies to over 300,000,
We don't oppose anymore.
you don't oppose at that point. Anything else you oppose?
Yep,
Oppose unless.
oppose unless. Well, and that's why I said only. Oppose unless, that's the only condition under which we would not oppose.
Okay, Betty.
Okay, that's an improvement, but I don't think we should do that to Portland. I think that Portland is having a hard time with losing their old houses, their middle-priced houses, and so that disturbs me. Thank you.
Okay, Claire.
Thank you. I would support the substitute motion. It's a little odd. We support it. It doesn't apply to us. Woo. So we're kind of agnostic on the question at that point.
Say we'd support it.
So let's reduce the crosstalk. Sorry. And I understand the need for staff to have clear direction. If we want our staff at the state legislature to advocate on certain things, we need to be very clear about what those are and what we want them to do. But I'm feeling like that's not where this body is at on this piece. And it seems to me, from what Greg has been able to share with us, that League of Oregon Cities is going to continue to push back on this bill and seek ways to mitigate the things that we might identify as harm. So while we might not be actively engaged in that process because we haven't provided our staff with clear direction, I believe Councilor Evans will be. So I think there's still ways for us to influence the outcome if this should actually pass, close to the way it might be now. But I just really, even after listening to my colleagues and thinking about the practical implications of opposing unless substantially modified, I just can't say that I support this approach from the state legislature.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. After listening to all the conversation, I'm now worried that if we were to say we opposed it unless it was amendment, it would be a disingenuous direction to staff. Because what I'm hearing is we would say, go and tell them that we're opposed to it unless it's amended, but there is no amendment we'd really be willing to accept unless it was something like Alan just proposed. So I don't want to be two-faced about it, so I get that piece. And so the notion to say, well, we oppose it unless you only apply it to cities over 300,000 doesn't have that phony ring to me. I can actually, with a straight face, say, okay, I can live with that because it doesn't do all the things that we don't want to do. So I can support that substitute motion. The concern I had originally was that in terms of direction for Ethan is there is no magic table. There's constant negotiations that are going on. And one of the reasons that you get to be a party to those conversations is you have something to contribute. And no is a very short conversation. And so if you say, what's your position? No. Okay, conversation done. We'll move on to the next person here. Now you can say, well, I want to tell you all the reasons why I say no. And maybe you say, okay, I'm interested in taking some time to listen to all the reasons why you say no, or I just move on to the next person. I think this one, though, this amendment actually has the ability to still say, here's how we want to have influence here, but I don't want to tell you that somehow you're going to come up with a version that's going to be okay to me. Because I'm hearing this table say there's really not anything else you could do that would be okay with me. So because I'm caught between that dilemma of not wanting to be disingenuous, but also wanting to have something to be able to say more than just no, this maybe is the compromise position that might work. So I'll support the substitute.
Emily.
Thank you. Eventually, we'll reach 300,000. I won't be here, but, you know, thinking ahead, is that what we want to have happen? This is still taking away home rule. It's taking it away from Portland. That's not okay. How can we say it's okay to for us to be out of it? You can't take away our home rule, but go ahead and take Portland's. That's a terrible precedent to set. You know, just like we have wards and we all look out for our wards, but we also come together and look out for the city. The cities are all part of the state. We should come together and look out for the entire state. And I am not willing to separate from Portland and say, they can have this mess, I'm out of it. I'm sorry, Mike, but I will not support your substitute.
Okay, anybody else? Mike, come on back.
I made that substitute motion, like I said, as a form of pragmatism. But there's some really good reasons why it's a really bad idea. And I think one of them is the original reason why we're trying to stay at the table is the relationship question. So we throw Portland and our friends up there under the bus in order to... No. That doesn't make any sense. No. I withdraw that motion, and I hope that we'll vote against Alan's as well. Nothing personal, sir, but I hope that we have enough votes here to just stand with the second largest city in the state and say, heck no, we're not in favor of this. It's not okay.
So just from a purely Robert's rules, are you okay with the withdrawal of this?
I'm okay with that. I think I've got another substitute motion I'd like to pull out of my back pocket.
Oh boy, I drank more coffee.
Okay, so that motion is off the table, but thankfully we've been all the way through the queue. So now I can turn to you.
So here's my motion. And
you're still on the table, sorry.
Well, okay.
He's offering a substitute.
He's offering a substitute, okay?
Well.
You want me to read what this motion was? Do you have?
You can offer your substitute.
Well, my substitute is this, you know, that we flat out oppose House Bill 2001.
Second.
And leave it at that.
Second.
Second.
Third.
Okay, any other discussion? Do you? So, all right. I guess I can't fight the whole table on this one. I caution you that if this is a train that in some way has a lot of momentum because the speaker is behind it and she's got some of our local delegates behind it, that you are really, reducing your capacity to influence what that legislation looks like and I get it. I'm standing on principle. I hear you standing on principle, but I'm a little worried about cutting off your nose to spite your face, that you're making a stand on principle and it's going to come back to hurt you. But so I'll just say that. Do you want to speak one more?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to that just briefly. I've wrestled with this for a number of weeks, and my first position was Betty's position, and just say no. But I've kind of, based on this conversation, have moved back to the just say no position because, okay, yeah, if we have some modification of it, my sense of it is trains already left the station, is getting ready to run over us. And so why don't we just put our flag in the sand and say, all right, let's do this. Sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in. And there's sometimes when negotiation is not the path to take. And we can still negotiate from a position of no. We can still negotiate from a position of no. And what it does, it says very clearly to the people who have proposed this piece of legislation that A, it's not a good piece of legislation. B, we are opposed to it for these reasons, which are all enumerated in the bill. And C, we're willing to work for something that is going to benefit cities and not, something that is going to destroy all of our land use planning and what we have done and what we've done for the last 10 years with Envision Eugene.
Okay, Alan.
So if we say oppose this bill, strongly oppose this bill, and then someone comes up and it's going towards passage and somebody comes up with an amendment that we like, that will make it more palatable as opposed to this version of it, we'd have to say no. We're opposed to the bill, period. And that's a wrong place for us to be because that's not what we want to see happen. If this train left the station, as you said, and I think it partially has left the station, it's not going very fast, and there's still ways to change the track, which track it goes down. And that's what I'm thinking about is which track it's going to go down. So if we say strongly oppose HB 2001, comma, and have staff work to kill the bill or substantially amend, that allows us the ability to then work with people down the road when this bill's moving forward, as opposed to just standing on the sideline saying our position is hell no. Like Chris said, that's the end of the conversation. In the legislature, people don't have time to stand around and hear why you said no. They're moving on to the next person. So working through some of these amendments, if we got this amended so that it was going to happen anyway, but the last minute it only applied to transit corridor, or quarter mile from a transit corridor, that'd be a hell of a lot better than it is right now. So that's the kind of thinking that was behind my original motion. So I urge you to support that version of it.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, if we take a position that says we flat out oppose it, and if the train is going on the track and it looks like something's going to pass and there's a piece like the legal part that we really don't like, and we start going in and trying to maybe get rid of that piece, that's called an amendment. And Ethan is not authorized to do that. Right. We have specifically instructed him not to do that because no means no. We take out the unless amended, we take out instruction to Ethan to try to do any kind of influencing or changing or manipulating at the end. So whatever comes out the other end of that sausage machine cannot be with our involvement because we said no, period. So that's just the caution that if we say no, period, to try to get our strength of feeling out, and I'm hearing a lot of strength of feeling, and I don't dispute that at all. But it's a strength of feeling that has no room for trying to exert any influence at all later on, at least for Ethan. Now, individually, we can go to Salem because we're elected officials and we can do whatever we want to, and that will have whatever influence it has. But Ethan is our person who knows those people can get into those offices and can talk on a regular basis, but he will have specific instruction to not do that, other than to go into the office and say, no, and here's why. That will all he's authorized to say. So I'm just saying that's the playing field we will create for ourselves, and whatever comes out at the end of this conversation, we will live with because we had no influence on it at all.
All right, I have Mike one more time.
Thank you, Mayor. This has nothing to do with my feelings. It's entirely about intellect. It's what I think. I think that Ethan, by the way, too, has constant conversations with our legislators, not just from here, but from all over the state. And I think he's very good at his job. I served on intergovernmental relations for a number of years, and I've watched him. He's good at it. The question is about the effectiveness of our statement. If the leadership in our state legislature imagines that the people around this table don't know and don't understand the intricacies of yes, but, or no, but, and how to be sophisticated and how they work with others, if they imagine we don't understand how that works, then I would understand why they would end the conversation there with a no. But I'm sure that they recognize we are not. I'm sure that they recognize that if we all stand up and say no, period, that in and of itself is a stronger statement than what we're willing to negotiate about. And it better give them pause. Now, they're going to do what they're going to do. Our acquiescence on one or two fine points, which, by the way, I don't hear any agreement about around the table, isn't going to help. I think the most helpful thing is this council felt and thought strongly enough about it that it just said no. Thank you.
How can we vote?
Yeah, although I'm going to say, Greg, I'm going to let Greg go one more time here.
But one last time, you know, last time I was shopping for a car, I went on a couple of lots, and, you know, the deals that they were presenting me were not to my liking. And so I said no, and I walked off the lot. Mm-hmm. You know what? 15 minutes later, dude calls me back and says, I got another deal for you, you know? I think that we discount our position to some degree because we are the second largest city in the state. And a statement from us, you know, and like I said, my thinking has been evolving back and forth on this. But a statement from us that says no doesn't mean that we're necessarily out of buying the car game. You know, somebody will be willing to say, how can we pull this together and get as many cities on board as possible to go along with whatever new concocted plan comes out of this? Because I don't think that 2001 as it currently sits right now will exist in 3 months. I really don't think so. I think that they're going to have to have significant structural changes to this legislation before anything comes out and passes.
Okay, I'm going to put this to a vote. I'll turn to Alan in a minute. I'm going to say one last thing about this, though. This is around your process, around how you are directing staff to act on your behalf. And you are essentially saying he can only say no. And the only way he's going to be able to modify that is that if we come back for another 90 minutes and give him the opportunity to say yes to something. So we don't have the time to do that, because we have 3 meetings and we have 3 weeks without council meetings, and the legislature is moving forward. So I just want you to be really conscious that this is about how you direct, what power you give to your representative in Salem to do your work. And if you tie his hands, you are tying his hands for the next 7 weeks or 6 weeks. So just keep that in mind, that you're not going to be able to, it's not like the car dealer coming back in 15 minutes. You will not have empowered him to come back to you that quickly, and we're not going to be able to do that work. So proceed with caution. The goal of this oppose unless amended was to give him the latitude and to give you the latitude to watch this legislation as it goes forward and have some impact on it. So you can still stand on principle and say, we oppose. You can do that firmly, but you can still empower your representative in Salem over the next 5 weeks. So that's my statement. Alan.
I have a tactic suggestion that I think that if we were to vote on my proposal first and it went down, because I can count, then you could then, Greg, put forward your motion, and that might get unanimous support. Having a 5-3 on your motion is not as good as potentially an 8-0.
Yeah.
So I might suggest that you remove or withdraw your motion, have my motion still be on the table, and then you can reintroduce it.
From just a strictly procedural standpoint, you would still have the opportunity to have an 8-0 vote because a motion to substitute will then get put on the table. You will have to vote on that substitute motion again. So there would still be an opportunity to have an 8-0 vote if his motions to substitute passes.
So a no vote for his substitute motion would imply a yes vote for my motion?
No.
If it passes.
Shall we substitute? Shall we support? Those are the two questions.
So, right, so let's just.
Cleaner the way I was thinking,
It
but
is.
I understand what you're saying.
But you still have.
Much cleaner the way I was talking about.
But with the motion on the table, there would
As
still be an opportunity.
opposed to a substitute motion, just vote on one, then vote on the other one. Would be a stronger message.
Okay, so the motion now on the table is Greg's motion.
Shall we substitute?
The question is, shall we substitute Greg's motion for Alan's motion? Are we ready for that? And that was seconded, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 3. Okay. So now we're voting on Greg's motion, which is to oppose. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1. Okay, so we're opposing.
We got 8 though, but.
Okay, that was exhausting. All right, thank you all, and we are adjourned.